Good evening, and welcome to What's Your Story? My guest tonight has asked that her real name not be used. We ask that all viewers respect her privacy and not post her name should you know her. Her story contains a riveting chapter on the sexual abuse that she endured for years as a young girl. There is a chapter on growing up in a single-parent home with 9 siblings and an absentee father. Moving forward, we learn about her struggles with an alcoholic husband and 4 children to raise basically by herself. Another chapter takes us deep inside her desire to be the protector that she never had. We witness her triumph when she achieves her dream of becoming a police officer. She shares her feelings as to how that dream almost became a chilling nightmare when she came close to committing suicide. Welcome to the show, Jane. This is part 2. Welcome, baby.
Thank you.
Glad you're here. We want to start off, we gave the first part, we talked about your family background, your mother, your siblings, and your father, and your mom. Now we're going to get to you and your individual story.
Okay.
So you grow up, you get married, and at the time you get married, your husband was not an alcoholic,
No.
but he became an alcoholic. And please share with the people listening, at what point did you realize that he was an alcoholic?
About 10 years into marriage,
Okay.
we had our 4th child, and he experienced 4 losses of death in his family, of 4 very close people that helped raise him. After that, his coping was, instead of talking or seeking outside professional help,
Yes.
I'm going to drown myself with a bottle.
Yes.
We worked different shifts, so we prevented babysitting issues. And there were times when I would come home, everyone was asleep, but I could smell the alcohol on him. There was one episode where my child the youngest was with him, and he had a seizure.
Oh.
And luckily my neighbor found my daughter and helped my daughter, and my husband went off to the hospital, and at that point we realized that, okay, you need to get help. He did go and get help multiple times, and back then you only had so many stays in recovery where insurance would cover. And we exhausted that, so then we went into our savings and spent quite a bit of money trying to help get him sober. And every time he would come back and go down that slippery slope. It wasn't until he injured one of my children that I contemplated divorce for the final measure. There was no way I was going to live in a house where there was physical abuse. That was the one thing that I told myself because of my past history with my own dad.
Sure, yes.
And that was something I wasn't willing to cross that line on. So I filed for divorce. He moved out. Still tried to get him help. Went to court, supervision. Visitation was granted only with supervision. So I made sure everything was done so the children were always safe. And in the meantime, I had to pick up the pieces because he had lost his job, a very good one. And I now needed to become the breadwinner and to take care of my children. Several of my friends were police officers, and they said, you know, you're physically fit, you're good with people, you have a good attitude. I think you'd make a good candidate, apply. So at first I thought they were joking, and I said, okay, I will. So I started applying, and I was doing pretty well. And finally I did get hired. And I started in 1992, and I loved it.
I want to back you up just a
Sure.
little bit here, though.
Sure.
We're going to get to that part. I just want to know, how did you prepare your children to live in an environment with a parent who was an alcoholic? I mean, you'd had the experience,
Right.
like daddy's home, and then, oh boy,
Right.
daddy's home. So how did you prepare your children?
Well, honestly, my children never experienced
What you did?
what I did.
Okay.
And I think that's probably what allowed it to flourish as much as it did, because his behavior was in check. And he was a very high-functioning alcoholic.
Oh, okay.
But once the behaviors crossed that line, that's when the changes were made. But I told my children early on that, this isn't the proper behavior. There is a healthy way to consume alcohol. And unfortunately, some people can't. It wasn't until after we were apart that we did a lot of educating on the alcoholism and the effects, and they could see the physical effect. And eventually he succumbed to alcoholism at the age of 41.
What do your children ever talk about their dad? What their feelings about their father?
Oh, absolutely.
They got good memories of dad?
Yeah, absolutely. They have good memories, and they also have sad ones too.
Yes, yes.
I have a picture still I save, and it has happy 38th birthday, Dad. Please stop drinking.
Oh,
And I think to myself, how sad is that your children have to tell you that? And it's a family disease, no matter what, you're not the one drinking.
but everybody suffers.
But everybody suffers, and it's one thing if it's a woman, you can say, well, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not smart enough, maybe I need to be skinnier, maybe I need to be this, maybe I need to be that, but how do you compete with a bottle? You can't. You can't,
The liquid lady,
Yep,
she has no peer.
no,
Yeah,
no.
wow. All right, so Jane, with all the adversity that you faced, you still had an intense desire to be independent and make it on your own merits. This came from your mother, did it not?
Yes, it did.
Yes, it did. So mom was independent and tough.
Oh, yes,
And that's what she instilled in you.
absolutely,
One of the positive things that came out of your experiences was that.
right.
And that toughness, that independence, led you at the age of 31 to become a police officer. And this is the fulfillment of a lifelong held dream. All right, why did you become a police officer? What was the motivation?
The motivation was my need to have stable employment and to have a job that I'd be proud of. And what other job could your children be more proud of than be a police officer? I do remember my younger son was so upset that I was becoming a police officer because during that time, a local police officer was shot and killed in the line of duty.
Oh, yes.
And it was on the news.
Oh, yes, yes.
And my son was devastated. And I had to really do a lot of talking and a lot of convincing that I'm going to be safe, I'm going to be careful, and I will make sure that I come home every night. And it took a long time to reassure him. And that's something to think about when you do go into it when you have children.
You had a 17-year career.
Yes.
What rank did you achieve?
Sergeant.
Sergeant. All right. That meant that you had some knuckleheads under you. Is that correct?
Yes.
And they were knuckleheads by and large some of the time, right?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
Like every
every
everybody.
job.
Yeah,
Yeah,
every job. Yeah.
Okay, being a woman, now I'm not trying to be disrespectful here, but is a 31-year-old rookie, is that unusual in the police department?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
Not with the changing dynamics of today.
No.
Did you feel accepted once you became a police officer by your male colleagues?
Yes, because we had a group of people all the same age going into the career at the same time, and we adored each other.
Okay.
Yeah,
So you all suffered the same.
Oh yeah, and we went out there and we were, those aggressive young cops who want to find anything and everything, and you're stuck on midnights, and it would be a fun competition to see who found a stolen car, or who found this, or who found that, or who made the first arrest, or, and it was just a lot of good camaraderie. And it was, that's the stuff they talk about,
Did you face any sexual harassment from your officers or superiors?
No.
None whatsoever in your
No.
17-year career?
No.
No.
Sometimes from the public.
Really?
If you arrested somebody and they wanted to, do something to you.
Yeah, I can imagine what that might be. Yeah.
Or, the public who didn't respect women in uniform.
You have that still?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
You ever found you made an arrest incorrectly? You arrested the wrong person? Did that ever happen to you?
Absolutely. We picked up a prisoner from the state police who picked up the wrong person. And the person was supposed to be 6'5" and 280 pounds, and we have 5'2" and 120 pounds. We get back, we see the biographics, and we're like, oops. We drove that gentleman home, fed him, and apologized and said, "You are all set, sir."
I'm sure he was appreciative of that.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Yes, he was.
There's an underbelly to doing a police work. You see the underbellies of all our characters. Your job is not nice in many, many, many respects. How did you handle that stuff that you had not previously been exposed to being a police officer? There is a there are numbers of police officers that do commit suicide. Right. And because the police organizations are paramilitary,
right.
And there's an old school of thinking that if you go for psychiatric help, you're weak and you shouldn't be on board and all that. Can you speak to that, please?
I think my life experience, everything I've been through, prepared me a little bit better than somebody who didn't. I've had sexual assault complaints. I've had child sexual assault complaints. And I understood and I felt what that person was feeling. So when I related to that person,
yes, of course.
It was with true emotion.
Oh, yes, of
and
course.
Respect and understanding.
Yes.
And I think that made my approach so much more tolerable to a victim, because I understood and I got it. Going to domestic violence calls and having women abused, bringing someone to a shelter, domestic women's shelter, because they've been abused that night. You saw it as a child, so you understand the need for this person to get to a safe location. You also understand that there are certain things you should and shouldn't say. So it really prepared me in many ways to be a good responder in that way. In other ways, I think it also concerned me, would I react so emotionally because it happened to me? And I didn't, which was a surprise.
You were able to...
I was able to separate that.
Separate the two, yes.
Yeah. So it was good that I was able to do that, but that concerned me.
Did you ever witness fellow police officers deliberately mistreating people in the public?
I think their approach was brought to a level faster than I would have brought it.
You mean had they approached the person differently,
right.
The result would have been different?
Yeah.
So they antagonized instead of de-escalating the situation. Yes.
I think sometimes what happens is a reaction to something is not always as good as it should be. If you can react in a very calm manner and approach somebody and listen, as long as they're not physical, then let them speak. They will vent and then finally come down to that point. If they're physical, then, you know, all bets are off. You got to keep safe and
Sure.
keep the public safe. But I've never really seen police brutality or witnessed any.
Racist conduct from the police toward the public?
No, towards peers, and we handled it internally and
Racist conduct within the police department?
Yeah, and we handled it with training and education and suspension.
People will say, though, how is it possible for them to do it within and not carry that out into the public when they go outside to deal with people of color or Hispanic people or people just different than they are?
Right. I can't speak for everybody, but for myself and my experience,
Yes.
I haven't experienced that. I would.
What would you do if you did? If you saw somebody saying and being deliberately
I would take them aside.
Okay.
I would definitely take them aside because it's wrong. And, you know, and make yourself safe. Have at it, you know. Handcuff the person if you need to.
Yeah.
But there's no reason to attack someone's character. There isn't.
Or their race or their
their
gender
race.
or their
By
religion.
by any way.
By any stretch of the imagination.
Right,
Yes.
by any way.
How did you feel when you were a police officer and you came home? You were your chest pumped up because you're proud of what you did that night. You made the public safe. Did you get to know the people you served? Did they know you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I did a lot with the community. I did a lot with kids. I also did a lot internally in the police department. And I really have to say that those were my proudest years.
Okay.
You know, I honestly loved being a police officer, and I loved the fact that I could help people and be their advocates if need be.
Be the protector that you never had.
Absolutely.
That's a powerful statement that you told me that I will always remember.
Yeah.
There came a time when you got injured.
Yes.
The whole thing resulted in, I guess, you're having to eventually leave the police department?
Yes, I retired on a medical disability.
And that wasn't a very pleasant experience for you?
No, it wasn't.
And that's when you were contemplating suicide? Is that the time frame?
Yes.
Would you talk with us about that, please?
Sure. My final day, I knew it was getting to that point. I was just trying to find a way of being able to do my job, but I knew physically I couldn't meet the standard. So the doctor and I both talked, and we decided that was it. That was what would happen. And I had to retain an attorney because I was threatened with termination while I was injured. And
Excuse me, weren't you a part of a union? Is
Yes.
there a police union?
Yep.
Okay, and they represented you well, or?
no,
No, okay.
no.
All right, you felt that they didn't do the job that they?
No.
Okay.
And I'm not sure, you know, there was a little bit of representation, but being threatened with termination when you're injured on the job, I don't believe is something you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And it only added more stress to me. During that time when I was trying to rehab, I got to a certain point where I knew I couldn't run anymore. And
Yes.
I couldn't lift.
Yep.
So those were two of the requirements that I needed to fulfill in order to do my job. And it's one thing keeping myself safe and myself getting injured, but it's another when you're back up and someone's counting on you.
That's right, exactly.
And
Someone else's life is in your hand, yeah.
Right, and once I knew that I couldn't do that, then the decision was made that I would retire.
Jane, tell me about the day you woke up and decided you were going to take your life.
It was actually the last day of my career, and I went home, and I remember handing in all my gear and leaving, and feeling so empty. It was something I'm not a quitter. In fact, in the police academy, I was so tired because I lived there Monday through Friday. My mom stayed in with my kids during the week. I came home on the weekends and I ironed all their outfits. I got all their clothes, you know, their food ready for the snacks for the whole week. I froze dinners for the week. And that was my weekend. Then Monday morning you went and you stood in formation at the police academy, and that started your week Monday through Friday. You ran home. And I remember I was just so exhausted, and it was just so stressful. I missed my kids. My daughter lost her first tooth. I had to talk to her on the phone. We forgot the tooth fairy. We had to put arrows down to the door, you know, because we kept forgetting the tooth fairy. And it was just so much. Make a long story short, I told my mother, you know, maybe I should just quit. And my mother was like, I didn't raise a quitter.
Okay, yeah.
So I stayed. So when I ended my career because I was injured, I felt like a quitter.
Okay, yeah.
And
So the morning that you were going to do it, how did you plan to do it?
I actually got up around 2:30 in the morning.
Yes.
I took enough Tylenol and Benadryl to kill a horse.
Yep.
And I remember walking to the destination where I was going to do it and nearly falling down and feeling the effects of the medication. And my goal was to drown myself. And I got there, and I got so sick to my stomach from the medication. That's the only thing that saved me.
Yes.
Because I would have died
Yes.
from kidney failure
Yeah.
with the amount of medication. I
Okay,
took.
yeah.
And when I got there and I was sick to my stomach, I just laid on the dock, and I remember crying and thinking, I can't do this. I had young grandchildren already, and my kids, and they had already lost their dad, and I was thinking, but I got to do it. You know, they'll be okay. I have enough life insurance. The house will be paid. They'll get everything they need to have a good future. They don't need me kind of feeling. And I got up and I walked back to shore. And all I said to my kids was, you know, I wish I planned better. That was it. Didn't give them an idea. Took care of one detail that I had to with a friend, and never left a message saying, you know, what my intention was. But I'm thanking God I wasn't successful now, because I have so much. I have a great family. I have a great husband. I still have my mother. My kids are fabulous. My grandkids are great, and I'm thanking my lucky stars that I was not successful. And unfortunately, years later, we lost people in our family to suicide. And I think we all need to come to grips with our mental health. I should have gotten help probably during the time of my injury, because I was at such a loss. I had done that job for so long, and then I couldn't. And it was a part of me that was taken away. And of course, you know, when you do try to commit suicide, they commit you. Something you don't want, but it ends up happening. And I remember being sent to the Purple Pod, which is the psychiatric pod in the ER. And I went there many a time with a prisoner. So I was not.
We're familiar with it.
Yeah, I was not the happiest. And I remember being so scared and anxious and having my husband sit by me and just
Sure.
hold my hand. And I said to him, you know, I'm so ashamed that I did this. And
Terrific.
he said, don't be. It's part of your story. It'll make you stronger.
And on that note, thank you so much for
You're
being
welcome.
here, okay?
You're welcome.
Thank you so very, very much.
You're welcome.
That's all the time we have for tonight's show. My thanks to my guest, Jane Doe. Everybody has a story. What's yours? Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, good night.